Grace Point, welcome, welcome. We got my rowdy crowd this time. Y'all glad to be here? Yeah, come on, stand up. Let's get into some songs. Move around, sing along, dance around, whatever you want to do. Oh yeah, yeah. Here we go. Oh, the sun's gonna shine in my life once more. Love's gonna live here again. Things are gonna be the way they were before. Love's gonna live here again. Come on, y'all sing with me. Love's gonna live here. Love's gonna live here. That's right. Love's gonna live here again. There'll be no more loneliness, only happiness. Love's gonna live here again. I hear bells are ringing, I hear birds are singing. Love's gonna live here again. I hear bees are humming and I know the days are coming, yeah. Love's gonna live here again. Y'all sound awesome, come on. Oh yeah, love's gonna live here. Love's gonna live here. Love's gonna live here again. No more loneliness, only happiness. Love's gonna live here. Come on, sing it one more time. Love's gonna live here. Love's gonna live here. Love's gonna live here, yeah. Love's gonna live here again. And there'll be no more loneliness, only happiness. Love's gonna live here again, oh yeah. Love's gonna live here again. That's right. That's our prayer, at least. So we've got a new song for you. And here at Grace Point, something that you'll read a lot, see a lot, is a sentiment of welcome home. So we believe every single person here, outside, if you want to belong, you belong. So in the light of that, we wrote a song. It's a Grace Point original called Welcome Home. You'll catch on to it. It's pretty easy. We've got the lyrics behind us, so let's all sing it together when you know it. Here we go. This is what we came for, and this is why we're here, to love our brothers, our sisters, our neighbors far and near. And we're just one big family, and everyone belongs. You don't have to ever be alone. Welcome home. Oh yeah, yeah. Welcome home. Stand with me in the sunshine, dance with me in the rain. I'll hold your hand, you can hold mine, and we will weather any day. 'Cause this is what we came for. This is why we're here, to love our brothers, our sisters, our neighbors far and near. And we're just one big family, and everyone belongs. You don't have to ever be alone. Welcome home. Oh, welcome home. Verse 2. We have burdens to carry, and we have sorrow and pain. But if we keep on sharing, every little thing is gonna be okay. That's right, come on, sing. And this is what we came for. This is why we're here, to love our brother, our sisters, our neighbors far and near. And we're just one big family, and everyone belongs. You don't have to ever be alone. Welcome home, yeah, welcome home. Come on, let's sing it one more time. Here we go, yeah. This is what we came for. This is why we're here, to love our brothers, our sisters, our neighbors far and near. And we're just one big family, and everyone belongs. You don't have to ever be alone. Welcome home. Welcome home. No, welcome home. Welcome home. That sounds great. Welcome home, Grace Point. You are loved. You're celebrated. You are welcome here. We'd love for you to, at this point, do a little meet and greet. I know some of you roll your eyes at this. I'm so sorry. But there are some new faces I see around here. So introduce yourself, have a conversation. We'll be back in a couple of minutes. We love you. You look great.
Good morning. Oh, you have that mic? You want me to switch mics? Sweet. Oh, okay. Hello. Good morning. I'm Tiffany, she, they. I'm in charge of our kids, youth, college age, other random things. So I have a handful of really random little announcements. If you have a baby or a toddler and you're like, hey, I would really like to not hold them this entire time, we have a nursery. And we can go get you checked in with that. And if you want to keep your child, please keep your child. They're yours. So that's okay. We are not going to have a kids moment. We're going to go straight back to the kids space in just a second. One announcement we want to make sure everyone knows in person and online, wherever you are, is next Sunday is our baptism Sunday. Yeah, we may have some mixed feelings on what that means. Here's what this means at Grace Point, okay? First off, here's what it doesn't mean. It has nothing to do with sin. It has nothing to do with salvation. It has nothing to do with memberships or give us money or wearing a white robe in the ocean and crying or anything like that, okay? It does mean that you are loved, and it means that you are fully accepted as you are, all the pieces of who you are. Yeah, that's really all it is. And so for kids ministry, we're going to talk a little bit more about what baptism is, which I promise you, all the adults in here are like, oh, yeah, all we're going to talk about is that it is that moment where we recognize and we kind of say yes to that we are loved. We're accepted. God loves us. We're a reflection of God's love. And that's all it is, okay? So if you're an adult that you're like, hey, I'm trying to figure out what that means too, we can have conversations about that as well. But I promise you, it's not a trick. It's not anything. So if that's something you're resonating with, or if you're a person who was not allowed to be baptized for whatever stupid reasons they gave you, know that you are allowed to participate in that fully as you are here, okay? 100%, okay? So if you're interested in that, you can find that on our QR code. Emily's going to give you some more announcements in a moment. But if you have questions, please reach out about anything like that you're maybe rediscovering at this moment. So if you have a kid or a baby and you want to go back to the kids area, we're going to dismiss and you can go line up at the door. So all kids, let's go.
Hello. First, I want to give a big shout out to our online community. Can we give them a hand? I just have a couple of things for you. First of all, if you scan this QR code that's up on the screen, if you're new here, fill out our Connect card, and that's where you can sign up for our newsletter. Our newsletter always has the most up-to-date announcements each week, each Friday. We have a new book study on All About Love by Bell Hooks, if you've heard of Bell. And it's going to be led by Taylor Middlebrook and Kyle Gregory. Yes, you see Taylor up here on the guitar sometimes. Very good. That's going to be every Monday starting next Monday, 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock. And it's going to be either in this room or the community room back here. So you can sign up for that on the QR code. And then please consider coming to first service. I know that some of you can't for whatever reason, or you really just cannot get out of bed. But that's okay. But we do want to make sure that we have like a good disbursement of people between both services, and also in between the services or after or before first service. Let's just make sure that we're supporting the loading dock because they open up for us every Sunday. They open especially for us, so we want to make sure that it's worth their while and that they get some good business from us. Grace Point's goal is to create a safe, affirming, and transformative community. If you would like to be part of financially supporting the work that we do, you can text any dollar amount to 84321. You can go to gracepoint.net/give. You can scan the QR code, or you can just Venmo us at GracePointTN. Thanks.
I feel like y'all just sat down. But I'm going to ask if you are able and want to join us and stand. We're going to do one of the songs that I'm calling reimagined hymns, reclaimed reimagined hymns. And this one wasn't too familiar with me growing up. I came from the Redback hymnal, Pentecostal, so we didn't do Be Thou My Vision. But when I started thinking about this song, I started thinking, now what are the things in life that we can really rely on to help us navigate and direct us and be our vision throughout life. And so I think I came up with 3 verses. And the first one is, I believe we can trust our own eyes, our own experiences. Some of us were taught that we couldn't do that. But I truly believe that we're able to trust ourselves, to know what's right and wrong, and to be led by love. And the second, I think, is our neighbors, our friends, our community. Should be able to look to one another to also do that as well, for us to be circled and surrounded by people who will fight for us and speak up for us, and for us to do that for others as well. And then the last one is the love of God in us. The love that I think every single person inherently has. We're able to be led by that sort of love as well. So with that in mind, you can assign meaning yourself to these songs as well, of course. But I would love for us to sing this rewritten hymn together, Be Thou My Vision. Be thou my vision, O darkness and renew my sight. Show me the beauty in all that I see, all that's before me and all that could be. Be thou my vision, O neighbors and friends, circle around me and be my defense. Gently remind me should ever I stray. Hurry and find me should I lose my way. Be thou my vision, O love in my heart. Lead me with kindness and never depart. Teach me to walk in compassion and grace. Reveal the glory of God in each face. And we are all connected, yes, we are the same. Reveal the glory of God in each face. Amen. Thank you so much. You can be seated. Beside me, this beautiful, beautiful being. She's going to bring us the message today. She is one of our own. We love her, Miss Hunter Wade. You make her welcome.
I will try. Good morning, Grace Point, to everybody in the room and everybody online. Hello, especially to my online community. Can't see your faces, but I feel you there. So we love y'all. Good morning. I'm so glad to get to be here. I have to say, I was getting emotional hearing y'all sing that last song. I think in the first service, I was singing so loudly because I was nervous and like expelling anxious energy, but to hear y'all was so lovely. I just am so excited to be here. Like Ricky said, my name is Hunter. If we haven't gotten the chance to meet yet, I have been around Grace Point. I interned when I was finishing up my seminary degree, and then I graduated, and now I just get to be a part of the community and be here in Nashville, and it's so fun. So I have a lot of fun stuff. It's fun to me. Talking about the Bible is fun to me, but I have some fun stuff for us to talk about. But before we dive right in, I just want to take a moment to name some not so fun stuff that might be swirling around in your emotions, your body. I know it is mine, and that is the very upsetting Supreme Court rulings that we got this week. Yes, that is definitely weighing on my body and my mind, and I know our communities as well. And so, namely, talking about the ending of affirmative action, the ending of Biden's plan to forgive student loan debt, the legalizing of discrimination against LGBTQ plus people by businesses, and then also the ruling that the Navajo Nation does not have right to clean water, which is a human right. So those namely, and I'm not telling y'all anything you don't know, that these rulings have such intense ramifications for people in their everyday lives and marginalized people. And these aren't just something that isn't going to be ripple affected throughout everywhere. And to have this come from the place that we look to find justice and have this deeply unjust rulings is very upsetting. And so I named that, like I said, not because you don't know it, but because we get to hold space for each other in community. We get to hold on to hope for each other when one of us has lost sight of it. We get to encourage each other in doubling down our efforts of supporting organizations who are already supporting these communities and have been and will continue to. And we get to just support each other in reimagining what our world could be and holding that better, bigger vision where capitalism is not more important than human flourishing. So all of that, whatever you're feeling and experiencing in light of that, just know it's welcome here. You are welcome here. And just want to name that for us because I know it's real and it's happening and we're feeling it. So deep breath, big inhale, exhale. Okay, done with that. Also, I forgot, if you are a member of our youth and you would like to go hang out, now is the time. I forgot to say that. And now we are saying it. So, getting into what I was excited to talk about this morning is I'm going to tell a story, or a kind of a couple stories. And if there's one thing you need to know about me, it's that I love a good story. Telling it, listening to it, especially if it's funny. That's the kind of story I'm here for, so if you have one, please tell me. I am a really easy laugh, so if you need a good audience, I would love to hear it. My friends like to tease me that I am everybody's best audience, including myself, because I also think I am funny, and it just makes life more fun. So if you have a funny story, come tell me about it. But my understanding of stories and my love of story has shifted this year. It's kind of gained some meaning and some depth it didn't have before, because starting in January, I got to be a professor at Belmont teaching the Bible, which is wild, and I was so scared. It was the first time, and I was so scared. It was like a super, chill class called Understanding the Bible, just all of it, all at once in one semester, and I was like, okay, sure, how do I make this engaging and intelligible to a room full of 19-year-olds? Guys, they look so young. Like, they're so young, and I'm like, you're in college? What? You can drive? It's shocking. But and in this group of 19-year-olds, there's some who grew up in Christian school their whole lives. Like, having a Bible class is basically boring because they know all of it already, right? I was that person, so I get it. And then there's people who really only ever heard their grandparents reference the Bible. And one of those students asked me on the first couple weeks, she was like, I have a question. I was like, oh my, you want to engage? Okay, please tell me your question. And she said, what are the Testaments? And I was like, that's such a good question. I would love to tell you the answer. We have to talk about a lot of history to get there, but we'll do it. And so hopefully now she knows what those are. Don't know if I ever directly answered it, but that's okay. But in trying to figure out how we were going to talk about this, I came to see, honestly, through the course of this semester, that story and stories was the best way for us to access it. We all could read the text, imagine the story, talk about the stories of the people who wrote it and the context, talk about the story surrounding it in the book, and then also talk about our story coming to this text. What are we bringing with us? Where has the stories of our lives and our experiences meeting us as we intersect those stories with that of the text? And honestly, I got to give credit where credit is due. A large part that this theme started to emerge was we read Inspired by Rachel Held Evans, which we also had a book study here on. If you haven't read it, it's fabulous, and she helps frame it in this way as well. And as we spent time talking about stories, I kept saying, I felt like a broken record, I kept saying, humans are inherently meaning-making creatures. We crave story because we crave meaning, and we start to string events together into narratives and give our lives and our purpose meaning and give words to it. And that's why this book can be helpful, can be important. It also is, we look at this book and the ways that it has been used and abused, and the stories have been twisted in ways that we didn't find when we were reading them together in this classroom. And so this was how I was trying to sell them on why stories are important and why we're going to use that to talk about the Bible. And thinking about that framework this week, it has come to life in a new way, because as you know, it's July 2nd. We're coming into July 4th, Independence Day, all the things. And all week we're going to hear stories about our country, namely our origin story. How did we get here? How did this American experience happen? And if you're anything like me, this is how I first heard that story. All of this is in air quotes, so just so I don't have to keep doing this, just like remember. So this story was told to me as, okay, these brave men and women came over from Europe and they were seeking a new world, and double air quotes on that. And they found it, and it was lush and wonderful, and they decided that we wanted to live differently, and we were gonna be so different, a land where people got to decide for themselves how they wanted to live. It was gonna be equal, and we needed to separate from the old country to find that. And now we celebrate it on July 4th. So that's a story that I grew up with and loved and leaned into. And I love hot dogs, so let's eat a hot dog and talk about this story and light off some fireworks. But then, luckily, I bumped into some other perspectives of this story. And you can imagine how that changes what you learn from the story and how it impacts you and how then it shapes your worldview. And so imagine hearing this story from somebody who already was in the new world, who was indigenous to this continent. They might tell it like these people who had shockingly pale skin showed up and declared everything was theirs, and that if you didn't agree with them, they would kill you, and also God ordained it, and now they keep saying it's a dream, but to us it feels more like a nightmare, right? Or imagine that an enslaved African kidnapped from their country, made to work and build our nation's economy on their back. If they're telling the story, they might say, yeah, I side with the living nightmare of this, instead of this American dream. Or imagine that it's a white settler who's telling the story, but she's a woman, and she's hearing people talk about, oh my gosh, it's gonna be so new and different, a world where men govern themselves. And she thinks, and everything else, and everyone else, and this doesn't actually feel new to me. It feels like old patriarchy, new place, but same bad happening everywhere. The story really changes depending on who's telling it. And these stories are all trying to answer the question of, how do we get here? But I think this week I want to challenge us to also think, and y'all are probably already thinking this, is here a place we want to be? Is this a place we want to be? And in order, if the answer is no, which I think it is, I think a first and fundamental step to changing where we are is changing who gets to tell the story, and whose stories are we listening to, and whose stories are we upholding. And as we think about that this week and this month, as that starts to be a theme of American pride, we can kind of interrogate these stories that were familiar and invite some unfamiliar voices and see if we can't find something that feels more like a dream for more people. And this week is a really good example of how stories aren't just something that you tell a kid at night or something that you tell around a campfire, but we live them, right? Like with the Supreme Court this week, we're seeing the descendants of these stories and the ones that intentionally ignore other perspectives and how that lives out. So it is important to hear these stories, to feel a different perspective, to allow it to change you, because it doesn't always change you. But if you allow it to, it just might. So I invite us to change who's telling the story this week and see if we can't hear something different. And I love stories, and I love the Bible stories as well. And what's interesting is this kind of thing where perspectives are bumping up against each other and the narrative changes. It happens in the Bible all the time. And not just in our talking about the Bible, although that's my favorite thing. That's what we do here, right? But in the stories itself. And there is one story in particular that I think about this when I think about two perspectives coming together and shaking things up. And it is the story of Jesus and the syrophoenician woman. And you might be like, Hunter, you're a broken record. You taught a whole study on that in the fall. And that is true. And I am a broken record because the story is just so good. But I promise if you were part of the Her study in the fall, we're going to see some different stuff. Yeah, first, represent. And second, we're going to see some different stuff in it this morning. So I'm going to read this story for us of Jesus and the syrophoenician woman. It comes from Mark chapter 7, verses 24 through 30. It is on the screen if you want to follow along. From there, Jesus set out and went away to the region of Tyre. He entered a house and did not want anyone to know he was there. Yet he could not escape notice. But a woman whose little daughter had an unclean spirit immediately heard about him, and she came and bowed down at his feet. Now the woman was a Gentile of syrophoenician origin. She begged him to cast the demon out of her daughter. And he, Jesus, said to her, "Let the children be fed first, for it is not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs." But she answered him, "Sir, even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs." Then he said to her, "For saying that, you may go. The demon has left your daughter." So she went home, found the child lying on the bed, and the demon was gone. Now, if you're like us who studied this in the fall, the very first question that pops up is, did Jesus just call this woman a dog? To which I would say yes, but we'll put a pin in that and we'll circle back to it later. And we're going to think about where Jesus is in this story when he enters into it. So we're told by Mark that Jesus is trying to get some space. Maybe he is tired and wanting to recoup. I mean, he's been out on the road, traveling, healing people, feeding people, exorcising demons, preaching, all these things. And he sneaks away to the region of Tyre and tries to get some freaking space. But that doesn't work for him because it turns out his ministry has grown in popularity, it's grown in fame, and even in this region, which is predominantly Gentile, people know about him, and people want to come see this healer and this teacher who has this crazy power. And so though he's trying to escape notice, this woman comes to him and is seeking help. Now, we don't know from Mark what Jesus was thinking and feeling. And to be honest, I didn't used to have a lot of compassion for Jesus's mental fatigue at this point. But because of the study where we talked and I heard different perspectives last fall, I was like, oh yeah, Jesus might be a little tired, might be a little cranky. I get it, I've been there. So see, different perspectives making us better already. But we don't know for sure. Mark doesn't tell us what Jesus is thinking and feeling when we come into this house, but we do get some details about the syrophoenician woman that are helpful to look at. So there's three ways that the author of Mark makes it clear to us that she is not like Jesus. They are different, and here's the three ways that it is. Mark says she's a woman. That's different. Patriarchal society. I mean, none of us in here can relate to how that would be different, but you can imagine what that might be like. I'm kidding. And then, so she's a woman, that's different. She is a Gentile, so she is not Jewish, different culture, different ethnicity, customs. They wouldn't have mixed together because Jesus is a Jew and she is a Gentile. And then Mark adds this other descriptor, which is syrophoenician, which we don't see come up a lot. And that just is adding this other layer of difference, making it super clear to us that she is not Jewish. She is a different religion. There are these barriers in between her and Jesus and their lived experiences. And so we can imagine that her story, whatever story she's coming into this moment with, are different than the one that Jesus has, even though they live in a similar region at a similar time, very different experiences because of these differences that Mark tells us. But, thinking about Jesus, this guy, we love him all the time. He is crossing cultural and religious boundaries. He is eating with people he's not supposed to eat with. He's healing people he's not supposed to heal according to the religious elite. So, he comes across this woman who's different, and you would think he's just gonna like traverse those differences and be good to go, right? That's like what I expect from the Jesus from my Sunday school days. And yet that's not what we see here. Instead, Jesus says this thing that feels really foreign, at least to me when I read it. He says, "Let the children be fed first. It is not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs." Now, even if you're sitting here without like awareness of the cultural and historical implications of that, if you're like me, you might read that verse and think, that doesn't feel great. Like, that doesn't land well with me. It's feeling offensive. It's feeling not super kind or loving. If you're thinking that, I would say you are right. Turns out, when you look at the historical implications, Jesus is using a derogatory word, a derogatory slur, calling this woman a dog. It was something that Jews called Gentiles, and not in a like fun, kind way, but in a way to say you are different, you are less than, you are a dog. And when he's talking about we need to feed the children first, it is plausible to think that he's talking about the children of Israel, God's chosen people. Jesus is in effect saying, I came here for the Jews. Like, that's who I am called to. That's who my ministry is for. And I can't help you. Even though already in Mark, Jesus has been healing and talking to Gentiles this whole time. So it feels like, what is happening? Jesus has decided to support this barrier of difference in between them instead of trample it like we are used to him doing. And that is offensive, and it's unlike him in my understanding of Jesus. And yet this woman is totally undeterred, and I love her. She is my hero, the syrophoenician woman, because not only is she not deterred by this very rude word that Jesus just called her, but she takes it and turns it on his head and throws it back at Jesus, like in this witty repartee. And she says, well, hey, dude, even the dogs eat the crumbs of the children. And she's using this metaphor, and she's saying, I think I can still get something here. I think there's something for me because I deserve to be fed too. So do all the people like me. And in effect, I hear her saying, like, I know what y'all say about me. I know what you say about people like me. That's not a surprise, but it's also not true. And I'm gonna stay here, and I'm gonna get what I need from you. And I like to imagine Jesus hearing this and being kind of like disarmed and also impressed. And then he gives in very quickly and says, you're right. Because of what you've said, go, and the demon has left your daughter. In another telling of the same story in a different gospel, Jesus says, it is because of your faith that your daughter will be healed, that you said to me. I also like to think of Jesus being like, good one. You're right. That was good. You go. It's all going to be okay. And this was an unfamiliar experience for Jesus because he often didn't lose an argument, at least what the Gospels tell us has happened, which probably is also a reason a lot of people didn't like him. Because like, who doesn't like someone who they can't like persuade, who will debate you and like stand so firm in what they think? And in fact, right before this passage in Mark, we see Jesus doing just that. He is debating with the Jewish religious elite, and they are telling him why he's wrong, and he's saying, no, I disagree. I'm going to stand firm on what I think. And yet this woman comes around, says one sentence, and Jesus changes his mind. Interesting. So what were Jesus and the religious elite, the scribes and the Pharisees, arguing about right before this? Well, they were talking, and the scribes and the Pharisees were saying, you and your disciples really need to like stick to the purity laws. You need to be washing your hands before you eat. These things we know. You're Jewish. Come on, get with it. And when you eat with unclean hands, or you eat something that's unclean, that's not kosher, it defiles you. And Jesus was saying, no. And we see what he says here in verse 14 and 15. He says, no, listen to me and understand there is nothing outside of a person that by going in can defile them, but rather it's what comes out of you that are what defile. And I don't know about you, but I don't really use the word defile in my everyday life, so I looked it up for us. And it means to desecrate or to profane something that is sacred. And because I've got to make that seminary degree work somehow, I also looked it up in Greek, and don't ask me to say the Greek word, I cannot pronounce it, but it means the same thing. It means to treat something that is sacred as if it is common, or to attempt to strip away the sacredness of something that God has already ordained holy and sacred and of God. And that's helpful to think about that definition, because I can't imagine what else could be more desecrating than to call someone who has come to you for help a derogatory word, right? And Jesus does that right after this in the story of the syrophoenician woman. And I wonder if Jesus, part of the reason that he changes his mind so quickly, not only because this woman is amazing and witty, but I wonder if he's thinking and realizing, oh my gosh, I'm doing the exact same thing that I just warned those religious people not to do. I am defiling this woman. I am making profane something as sacred. I'm treating something sacred like it's not. And what Jesus is arguing with them about is not even that it's making the other person defiled, but that it makes you defiled. It makes your sacredness. You're acting out of alignment with what your identity as a sacred image bearer of God is. And so luckily for Jesus, the Syrophoenician woman doesn't let him get away with it, but rather she engages with him and she gives her witty repartee, and he changes his mind. And in doing so, Jesus is giving her the dignity of what a sacred image bearer of God deserves. And he is also restoring himself back into alignment with who he is and the sacredness that he embodies as well. And what's interesting about this story is not only that Jesus chooses in this moment to, instead of, at first he attempts to hold up these differences, right? These three differences between them: cultural, gender, religious. At first he's like, this is the reason I can't help you, so I'm gonna stay on this side of the line. And in the way that she engages with him and demonstrates her humanity and her standing steadfast in that, Jesus changes his mind and crosses over that line in favor of common humanity and helps her and restores what was once desecrated to its true sacredness. And the supposed dog outsmarts the Son of God, and we love to see it. So not only did this one person change their mind in this moment between Jesus and the Syrophoenician woman, but I think a reason that Mark includes it in his gospel is because this same argument of we're different, can we be together, can we be in community, can we help each other, is still going on after Jesus is gone. In fact, in so much of the New Testament, you can see this argument happening back and forth between Jews and Gentiles of, okay, we've both experienced God in Christ, in Jesus. How do we live together? We're so different. We don't eat the same things. We don't wear the same things. Can we come into community together? And I think Mark and the other gospel writers put stories like this in here to say, yes, we can. And if you get it wrong, Jesus did too. Let's get over the line and keep trying. Let's listen to the women and keep trying. They know what's happening. That's just what I think. And so this story is like a microcosm of the change that happens in the early church. It's a microcosm of what can happen when we run into other perspectives and change the narrative. In this story, now we don't just have one narrator, Jesus, but we have two, the Syrophoenician woman, and they are choosing a different path, a different plot that has repercussions for centuries to come. I don't know about y'all, but I fall on the Gentile side of things. So I am here, at least in part, because of this woman and stories like this. So in this story, it's a miracle story, right? And that can be tricky for us as modern people to hear of miracle stories. And I want to ask y'all, what do you think is the miracle here? Is it that this woman's child who had an unclean spirit was healed? Whatever that means. We don't know. We weren't there. Is that the miracle? Or is the miracle that a man changed his mind? That might be the miracle. That might be what I think the miracle is. To me, personally, is the miracle that something that was sacred, that is sacred, was treated as less than, and then repaired and brought back to be treated with the dignity that it deserves, that that person deserves as an image bearer of God? Is the miracle that instead of allowing boundaries and prejudices that divide to prevail, they are traversed in pursuit of common humanity? Is it all of the above? It all sounds pretty miraculous to me. And I think this passage is a prime example of the miracle of hearing a familiar story in a new and unfamiliar voice and allowing it to sink in and to change you. Jesus was operating out of this old story that his people had of what these others, these different people, were like. And yet he bumps into a new perspective and changes his mind. You could say in real time, Jesus is deconstructing previously held beliefs about God, about himself, about what God says about those other people. And then in the moment is reimagining the story, expanding where God might be, what God might be doing, and who might get to be involved in that. In other words, a miracle. I think it's safe to guess that many, if not all of us in this room, have had this experience on one side or the other of bumping into a new perspective and having your narrative that you had so beautifully crafted and clung to just kind of crumble and change. I know that I have. Y'all, I am a cis, white, able-bodied, upper middle class, white, blonde girl from Oklahoma, and I am so grateful that I have bumped into other perspectives that have wrecked my stories. Wrecked them. Thank God, a miracle. And it's a miracle that I can still come to these stories and find meaning because my voice is not the only one I hear anymore when I read these stories. And coming out of a beautiful Pride Month and then a horrible week of unjust rulings by the highest court, and then into a new week where there's gonna be pride, but for something very different than what we were experiencing for the last month, I am still holding on to the hope that miracles, like the one in this story, still can happen. And I have that hope because we get to help make them happen. We get to set our stories aside and invite other people to share theirs, to shut up and listen to those other perspectives and let them sink in and change us. And that's a choice we have the power to make. We get to help remember and share and remind ourselves and others something that one of my college professors says of there's not secular and sacred spaces, but rather there's only sacred and desecrated people and spaces, and we get to treat them with the dignity they deserve of being a sacred image bearer of God. We get to also keep telling our stories, and maybe we'll be the unfamiliar voice that troubles a familiar story to somebody else. And also, perhaps in conjunction with that, we get to experience the miracle of standing in your dignity and worth when somebody calls you a dog or calls you the like, and we get to experience that God-given image bearer identity, even if we're the only ones that see it in that moment of ourselves. And if all that isn't a miracle, I don't know what is. So as the band comes up, I have a blessing for us that I want to share. And before I do, I just want to say thank you, Grace Point, for being a place where I hear unfamiliar voices and where my stories get wrecked and also retold in a better way. So I have this blessing for us. You can close your eyes, you can hold out your hands, you can stare into my soul, whatever you want. That is great. It's really short. May our familiar stories be told by an unfamiliar voice. And in the telling, may the sacred abound. May we partake of this miracle.
It's great. All of these lines across my face tell you the story of who I am. So many stories of where I've been and how I got to where I am. But these stories don't mean anything, and you've got no one to tell them to. It's true, I was made for you. I climbed across the mountaintop. I swam all across the ocean blue. I crossed all the lands and I broke all the rules. But baby, I broke them all for you. Because even when I was flat broke, you made me feel like $1,000,000. You do, and I was made for you. You see the smile that's on my mouth. It's hiding the words that won't come out. And all of my friends who say that I'm blessed, they don't know my head is a mess. No, they don't know who I really am. And they don't know what I've been through like you do. Yeah, I was made for you. Yeah, all of these lines across my face, they tell you the story of who I am. So many stories of where I've been and how to where I am. But these stories don't mean anything when you've got no one to tell them to. It's true. Oh, I was made for you. Oh, yes, it's true. Thank you so much, Grace Point, and thank you, Hunter. That was an amazing, amazing message. We hope to see you next week. We've got some chairs to pick back up, so we hope you'll stick around. And we love you. We're proud of you. We'll see you next time.